The RTX 2060 just came out. This is the mid-range card of 2019 from Nvidia. But if you have a card like a 980 Ti or something that performs similarly like a 1070, is it worth upgrading? Let's find out. So this is a huge step for us, by the way. Special thanks to Nvidia for setting out this RTX 2060 for review. You guys are awesome, and everybody that's supporting us, you all rock. So let's get to it then. So the RTX 2060 just came out. It was announced at CES earlier this month and released on the 15th, as I believe is the date. And original reviews and other information on the card led people to believe it's performing on par with a 1070 Ti and in some cases a 1080. However, a lot of question marks are around all that. And we have a 980 Ti here. That's my personal card. And the 980 Ti, I guess, sort of outperforms a 1070 most of the time. So I found that it might be interesting to put the RTX 2060 versus the 980 Ti and find out if it's worth upgrading, because I don't have a G-Sync screen, and I know that the new stuff updated to let you use FreeSync on your Nvidia cards. However, I couldn't do that with my 980 Ti anyway, so I'm pushing a non-G-Sync, non-FreeSync screen. I need to get as many frames per second as I can to make sure that I'm always in that smooth, buttery range. Over 100 FPS ideally, and I was actually considering the 2060 given the performance numbers that have already come out. So let's see if it's worth it in my case. So the test bench setup is a Xeon E5-1650 6-core 12-thread at 4.5 gigahertz. That is roughly an i7-4930K that's overclocked, 32 gigs of DDR3 1600, and then the RTX 2060 at both stock and overclocked, and the 980 Ti numbers are all overclocked. So let's get into it. Oh, and one more thing, all benchmarks are ran at 1080p. There you have it. Those are the benchmarks. I made sure to include ray tracing for Battlefield 5 because that is an important feature of this graphics card. So in the sections where there was a lot of reflections, I did see performance numbers drop into the 45 to 55 FPS range, but overall, mixed in with everything else, the average FPS was actually kind of impressive for me. DXR was on the medium settings, so it wasn't exactly pushing as high reflections as a 2080 Ti or 2080 would be pushing, but it was still really awesome to look at, especially going through that section. To me, everything sort of just looked the same until I got to the section shown in the benchmark. I saw that and I was honestly blown away a little bit, so that was really cool. I really dug that about the RTX card, but in traditional performance, It was not as impressive overall as I expected it to be. I guess I was expecting a bit much with all the talk about being 1070 Ti, 1080 levels, but my 980 Ti kept up with it pretty decently. So a lot of the benchmarks, it was maybe 10 to 20 FPS, maybe a bit more than that on some of the lighter games like Rainbow Six Siege or Fortnite, but overall it was a really solid range of performance numbers from this card, stock and overclocked versus the overclocked 980 Ti. What threw me off actually a little bit was the Firestrike benchmark. My 980 Ti overclocked outscored the RTX 2060 in the graphics score in Firestrike there, and that sort of blew my mind. Overclocking the RTX 2060 did end up putting it over the 980 Ti, but my brother's Zotac Amp Extreme 980 Ti is still roughly on parts in the 20,000s, just like this one is in the graphics score. So I'm not sure if this card really does that well in Firestrike, or Firestrike really shows how good the performance is of it. So let's get into final thoughts on this. Alrighty then, so all that said, the RTX 2060 for ray tracing as an entry-level card to get into ray tracing is definitely something worth considering, I think, but you know, Battlefield 5 being the only game we can test the ray tracing with doesn't exactly give me a really good idea of its overall performance with that feature turned on. Hopefully the other games optimize better for it, or let you adjust more the DXR low, medium, and high stuff so you can get it to run the way that you want. I believe that the bandwidth allowed by this card's architecture and memory, it's much better suited at higher resolutions, specifically 1440p in this case, especially if you want high refresh rate gaming at 1440p. I don't have a 1440p screen, and I only really had time to test with 1080p, so that's where I decided to go. Most people game at 1080p. That's still the majority of resolution, so this should work out pretty well for most of you guys watching this. Now, if you're going to ask me, would I have upgraded from 980 Ti to this RTX 2060? Probably not. After seeing these numbers, it wasn't as a big of a jump as I thought it was going to be. It would take something more on the levels of a 1080 Ti, honestly, in order to get me to upgrade. So an RTX 2070 maybe, but definitely 2080 or 2080 Ti definitely would have swayed me. But coming in at $350 and actually going on sale for $350, to me is kind of impressive. So you're going to have 1070 Ti-ish levels of performance at $350. When that card came out, it was around $500. That's actually pretty good. The naming aside, a lot of people are getting bent out of shape over there being a 2060, a 60 on the end, which is generally a $200 to $300 card. Honestly, if Nvidia released this with a Ti moniker at the end of it, nobody would be batting an eye. But I'm all about performance for the money. I don't care about the name. It could be called RTX Dum Dum 2080 500,000. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. I want to see the numbers, and if the numbers line up for the money to where I want it to be, that's all I need. So if any of that was a bit wordy, let's simplify it. If you have a 980 Ti or similar performing graphics card like a 1070, and you had the money lying around, feel free to get into this because you'll get into ray tracing. Great. But in terms of overall performance in traditionally rasterized games, probably not really worth the upgrade. You have to step it up from there. If you have a 1080 or 1080 Ti or something like that, or even just a 1070 Ti, not worth the upgrade as it is. Again, if you want to get into RTX, it's definitely worth considering, but traditional performance numbers is not quite there. With all that said, at $350, this card performs where previous generation cards started at about $500. So for the money, performance is on point. Definitely worth considering if you're in that budget, if that fits in your FPS range or whatever you're looking for there. It's definitely worth considering for that. So I'm Chris with Coalition Gaming. If you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe. We always got more coming. Check our socials, follow us. We always post a bit more stuff down there, linked in the description below, as well as joining our Discord. Come talk some tech with us. We also do our weekly streams every Thursday at 8 p.m. on Twitch and YouTube. Check that out. We'll see you all in the next video. Bye.